Welcome to Unexpectedly Successful. Join us to hear the raw and genuine stories of women founders who have created their own pathways to possibilities.
Dear audience, welcome back to another amazing episode of Unexpectedly Successful, the podcast that brings to you the raw and genuine stories of women founders who, despite it all, have been successful. Today, we have an incredible woman with me to share her own founder story, Dr. Chavonne Perotte. She is a life and marriage coach with the business Relatable LLC. I'm going to brag about Dr. Chavonne because she is an incredible coach, and I'm excited for all the nuggets that you're going to get from here in the life coaching and marriage coaching, but also in the business field. So she is a woman of multiple hats. She owns her business, which was launched during the maternity leave of her first child. She has two little ones, 7 and 9. And as well as being the CEO and founder of this company, she is a stay-at-home mom. She has a multiple six-figure business that she's most proud of, and we'll dig into it in a little bit. And she is most proud of the results that she gets to her clients. And one of the examples is this couple that came into one of her retreats, and this couple was done. It was the last chance for this relationship. And a few years later, they're not only staying as a couple, but they are part of the leadership of Dr. Chavonne's retreats. And now they're thriving as a couple. And I am excited to get into the nitty gritty. So welcome, Dr. Chavonne. I'm excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here as well.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Chavonne, the first question I have for you, what is being Dr. Chavonne for you as a person?
As a coach, I'm always into personal development for myself. And I was chatting with a friend today actually about a book that I'm reading. And one of the questions in the book asks, who are you? And so I was like, I'm going to ask myself this question every day, and I'm going to sit with the answer. And so I'm going to give you the answer that came today.
Awesome.
And the answer that came today is, I am great. I am one of the great ones. And the reason that I offer that is because I'm in a season of my business where, like, circumstantially, given the history of things, that doesn't really feel like my reality, but it is also something that I know in my core is true about me as a person. And I think just even that idea and that nugget for listeners, for anyone building a business, for anyone in entrepreneurship, there are so many days and so many moments and so many seasons in your business where you have to believe in what you know is true, whether it's actually what is in front of you right now or what you're building towards. And so that's what it's like. I'm great. I am a great mother. I am a great coach. I am a great human being. I'm a great wife. I'm a great daughter. And I think the fact that I can stand here and actually say that about myself and genuinely believe it is also a testament to the work that I do.
I love how you said, I am one of the great ones. I love that statement. And in addition to you being one of the great ones, what else is behind all of these amazing titles you mentioned? Being a mom, a wife, a coach, a daughter. What is behind all of that, Dr. Chavonne?
Yeah, I think behind it is honestly a heart that cares and a heart that's for people. I've, in the course of operating this business, have seen so much of what life coaching is and what it can offer. And I think, like, regardless of my niche being a specific marriage coach, my heart is always towards helping people. And that is a role that I carry. That is something that I embody really in every aspect of my life. I coach my kids. I coach everyone that I talk to because my heart is always geared towards helping. I was a coach before I even started this business. And so that is a part of who I am. I would also say what's behind me is the Spirit of God. I am a believer, a Christian. My faith is very important to me. And I think that I strive to live my life in a way that demonstrates love and that helps people love each other better. I think behind me is an incredibly ambitious person. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't even know where the ambition came from. It's just there, right? Like, obviously, it's a seed planted in me when I was created, but I'm always looking for what's next, what's better. Like, I'm obsessed with growing, evolving. I'm taking a week off of work this week. And my friend was like, well, what are you doing since you're not working? I'm like, I'm doing my inner work. I'm like reading books. I'm like studying. I'm growing. I'm evolving myself. It is just who I am.
That's awesome. Beautiful. And I'll dig into some of the things that you just mentioned here, because I think it's a lot of really cool pieces there to unfold. So you mentioned, she said, the Spirit of God demonstrate love. So by demonstrating love and helping people love each other, you are in the perfect niche, right? Marriage couples. Anyway, that's alignment between your gifts and what you do. What have been one of the most defining moments for you, Dr. Chavonne, as a person leading to becoming a business founder? And you touched briefly on something about ambition. Can you tell us about what is that journey for you?
I think the journey honestly started in my family, right? I came from a family where the expectations were very high. And so doing anything mediocre was just really not acceptable. And I think I really took that on and always saw myself like as a leader. I'm the oldest of 3 children. So by default, I was in a leadership role so much, but even among my friendship group, I was the natural leader. And so I think like this idea of being comfortable leading, of being comfortable sort of like being in the forefront. I'm also very extroverted. And I love to talk and I love people. I think that in and of itself and those combinations of things really have led me to always be thinking creatively about what can I be doing. So even before I started my business, I had multiple side businesses. Even actually in my doctoral program, I'm doing research and I decide to start a nonprofit mentoring group, right? So it's like, wow, starting something, initiating projects, helping, serving has always been in my nature. And so after I graduated and I worked for a nonprofit, I also started a business doing event planning because I was like, I love doing events. This is a passion. So let me do this in addition to my full-time job. And so it's just been in me to always pursue the things that bring me joy. And I come across so many people in my life who like have ideas, they have things that they want to be doing, but they have a lot of reasons why they're not doing it. And I think there's something about me, something that God has put inside of me that I can't rest when I have an idea to do something and I'm not actually taking action on it.
Wow. Okay. So you mentioned during your doctoral program, you started a nonprofit organization for mentoring. During your full-time job, you had an event planning. Do you have earlier recollections of you having this desire to own your own business, to create something, to generate a service, a serving way to people?
My very first job out of college, I knew like that I wanted to be a leader, right? I knew that like my boss's boss's boss, I was like, no, I want to be like that, right? I don't want to be
the top-notch person.
Yes. And so there was always something about it that I knew like I'm designed and created to be a leader. And I remember when I transitioned out of my job after I got my doctorate degree, and it was very amicable. And I was talking with my boss, and she had actually come over to my house and was meeting my parents, and we were having like a graduation party for my sister, I think. And she was like, I have no doubt that you will do whatever you set your mind to do. And my dad made the comment, he was like, yeah, Chavonne will work for no one. And when he said that, I knew that it was true. And I think it was, while I worked for that organization, and I worked there for 8 years, and it was wonderful, and I loved the work that I did. But I also started my own business while doing that, right? So there was always a part of me that was just like, no, there's a part of me that knows I'm designed to create and to initiate. And so I don't think it was even a conscious, like, I'm going to be a business owner. It's just like, no, I'm not satisfied, not creating, not initiating, not leading a project. Now, don't get me wrong. I can be a great team member, right? When I'm not in the leadership role, but inevitably, no matter what I'm a part of, I become the leader of it, which saying that, it's almost like, she's so full of herself, or she's so conceited. And it's not that at all.
It's called confidence.
Yeah. It's just,
and clarity.
It is. It really is. And because of that, though, I have learned now, there are some times when I can't, even though the leadership position is like my natural inclination, I can't operate in that everywhere I go, right? Now that I am the CEO of my company, while also having 2 small children at home that still need a lot from me, I recognize, like, even though I may be tapped to be a leader in these other areas of my life, now is not the season to lead everywhere.
So, Chavonne, the first time that you started your own business was during those 8 years at the nonprofit organization?
Well, I would say probably when I started the mentoring program as a graduate student, really. That was me doing research. I was in inner city Baltimore doing research with adolescent students. And what's so interesting is I was doing like a qualitative interview. I was doing interviews with young children, not young children, they were adolescents. And I remember when I called one child to do her interview or to schedule it, I heard her say to her mom, "This is my mentor." And I was like, I'm not even a mentor. I'm literally doing my research. I'm just following a protocol, asking you questions. And when she said that, I recognized that giving her space to just talk about her life and listen, and like in coaching, we call it holding the space for her. It helped her feel so connected to me. And when I saw that and I saw the need, I was like, I'm going to create a mentoring program. So that to me, honestly, feels like my first entrepreneurial endeavor, even though it wasn't like a paid for money situation.
Oh, that's beautiful that she felt valued and heard by you interviewing her. And then what you said earlier, that you don't feel comfortable without doing what you see as an opportunity. And then you took the opportunity to move into the creation of that nonprofit. Is that still in existence, Dr. Chavonne?
It's not. So it was when I live in a different state now. So after I graduated, I moved and it didn't continue. It continued for some time afterwards. It's not in existence anymore. But my heart is still there. It's definitely like when I think of my big vision for my life, creating a confidence center is actually like in my heart to do, like an actual standing building center that teaches children confidence.
So you've mentioned a couple of times your doctoral program, and I've been referring to you as Dr. Chavonne. So tell us about your doctoral program. What is it? What was it on? And I'm not going to ask you what was your dissertation about, because it's not a fun question for anyone who's been through that.
Actually, it was amazing for me. I have to say, I picked a dissertation that I actually loved. But so my degree, I have a doctorate in public health. I went to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and as a public health student, like public health is a very broad range of things. I think in post-COVID life, we have an interaction with public health at a level that we probably have never had before as a country. So there's different like lanes of public health. And the lane that I was in was more in the social and family sciences range. And so I actually really studied adolescent development, adolescent health, adolescent relationships. That's what my doctoral dissertation was on. So I've always been a person who is fascinated with like how we develop as humans. I was in the Department of Population and Family Health Sciences, which really looks at like growth and development across the lifespan, which now as a life coach, I'm like, of course, that's why I was drawn to that. And so I did a lot of research. I worked at a clinic that adolescents went to and talked with them about their relationships, studied how they make relationship choices and the behaviors that they engage in their relationships. And then after graduating, I relocated and worked for a nonprofit doing adolescent health program. And I led the relationship-based program.
That's exciting. I have a question. Do you miss school after finishing your doctoral program?
I don't miss the school aspect. I think what I still love is the learning environment. So something that I've been thinking about a lot, which is why I think I enjoy being part of like communities of people studying and learning the same types of thing, is I miss the learning environment.
So you've talked about before, you know that you were designed and created to be a leader. What does being a leader means to Dr. Chavonne?
I actually years ago created a personal mission statement. And in that, it was, my mission is to use my knowledge, skills, and experiences to inspire people to take action in their own lives. And that to me is what a leader is and does, right? They use what they've been given, they use what they've been through, they use what they know to share with others, to lead and inspire others to grow to their full potential. So that's what it means to me.
That's awesome. So can you tie that into now the business that you own and run?
Yeah, it's the exact thing, right? So what's so fascinating is when I started marriage coaching, I always get this question like, why marriage coaching? Like, how did you decide to do marriage coaching? And when I initially started the business, it came from, well, this is just my area of expertise. I just know this stuff. Like I've been studying it for years. I've created trainings and program and curricula on it for years. And at the time that I started, my husband and I, we had like what I would describe as like an ideal marriage, right? We were like very intentional about our communication, very intentional about like caring for our relationship. And then it wasn't so easy, right? Like as most marriages go through seasons and periods of time where it's like, did we make the right choice? Are we the right partners for each other? A lot of stress, a lot of strain. And it was then that I really learned not only the tools that I was teaching, but like applied them at a level of depth that I think has made me a better coach. And so when I talk about using your knowledge, skills, and experience, it's like, did I have the knowledge? Of course. Did I have the skills? Of course. Now I have the experience. Now when my clients tell me, no, I'm so frustrated at my spouse right now, I can't even look at them. I'm not even sure if I want to stay in this marriage. I know exactly what they're talking about. I know exactly what that feels like. I know exactly what the mindset is. I know exactly what's going on inside of them to create that thought pattern and how to shift it.
Wow, that is so powerful because you had the knowledge, but if you would have started that business when your marriage was in the ideal stage, you would not have been able to relate to those issues, right? Of the very reasons they were coming to you for help.
It would have been a very like academic, heady experience rather than like, no, this is my life too. Let me show you the way.
That is a powerful thing because sometimes we see the challenges in our lives as a burden and not as a lesson to take something from there and then help someone who may be going through the same or similar situation. So I love how you just enhance your academic knowledge and expertise with your own personal.
Every moment of challenge and the tears that I cry, right, even over my own marriage, it's like I'm reminded, again, just anchoring in my faith, I'm like, God is wasting nothing here. Right? Like there's not one argument or disagreement or disappointment that I experience that won't, one, grow me and help me, but then also help me to serve my clients even better.
So from your perspective and knowing for like observation and experience, what are the similarities and differences in relationships, adolescent versus married couples?
So much.
I knew it was loaded.
Part of it, it's like, as I'm trying to teach these relationship skills to the teenagers, I'm like, you don't have these at home. So how in the world are you supposed to implement this? So what's so fascinating, a lot of my work with my adult couples centers on helping them understand and uncover their inner child. Because whenever a couple is in disconnection or disharmony with each other, it is because there is an inner need inside of them that's in conflict with the other people. It's literally like two teenagers or two 5-year-olds are having an argument with each other. So whatever needs were unmet as they were growing up, whatever coping mechanisms they developed as children to handle their emotions, to handle conflict, that's what comes out when they're arguing, right? So a lot of the times when I'm coaching my clients and they're talking about a trigger moment or a moment in their marriage that wasn't going well for them, I'm like, well, what does it remind you of? And it's always tracing back to something in childhood where it was like, oh, it reminds me of my dad who like didn't prioritize me. It reminds me of my mom who was so critical of everything I did and I could never please her. Right. So there's little difference at all. Honestly, I think the major difference is that as adults, we have a different part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is fully developed, where we have the capacity to make more conscious decisions, whereas adolescents, their brain isn't as developed in that part. So they're making a lot of unconscious decisions and don't even have the capacity yet to make different choices and reverse the habits. What's great about that time is if they learn it right the first time, that will be how they operate for the majority of their life. And for us as adults, we're now at the disadvantage because we're unlearning things that we learned unconsciously and unhealthily, and now having to reverse to, eliminate habits and then build new ones on top of it.
What an answer. I did not expect that, those similarities, but it makes sense. It makes sense totally. So going back to what you said earlier, nothing was wasted. Even that built so well into what you're doing right now based on these descriptions. Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Going back to you as a business owner, at the beginning, we mentioned that you launched this business during your maternity leave. What in the world made you decide during that moment of stress to add another layer to do this, to become a business owner full time?
Such a great question. So when I went on maternity leave, I knew that I didn't want to continue in the role that I had at the organization. So I'd been promoted. I was at a senior leadership role. And I knew when I was conceptualizing like how I wanted my life to be as a mom now, that the demands of that job really didn't fit with what I wanted. And the block that I experienced was like, well, how am I going to make as much money doing what I'm doing here on my own? Right? Like just the idea of that at the time was like so foreign to me. But literally like while I was on maternity leave, I was watching an episode of Oprah, Super Soul Sunday. And she had a gentleman on, Stephen Pressfield. He was talking about this book, The War on Art, not the art of war, The War on Art. And it was talking about how when we feel compelled to do something, when it is like our purpose, there is so much resistance and there's so much procrastination and there's so much self-sabotage and there's so many things that keep us from doing what we really want to do. And literally, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to read this book. But the whole point of the book was you just do it, right? You don't like wait for situations to be perfect. You don't wait for it all to make sense. And at the time it didn't. And at the time I didn't even know what life coaching was, to be perfectly honest. But I wrote down like, these are all the things that I love to do. I love helping people. I love being a mentor. I love teaching. I love creating events, thus the event planning company. I love bringing people together to learn. I love training and facilitating. I love writing, right? And I've written 3 books since then too. So it's like all of those things didn't make any sense. But I was like, it doesn't have to make any sense. The whole point is to just go forward with it. And so that's what I did. I just started going forth. I was like, I know how to do workshops. So let me start with a workshop. So I did a workshop, promoted it, developed a contract from that, and then like moved on and was invited by friends who ran other groups on social media, and just like was like, oh, this is like a real thing. I was scrolling on social media, saw an ad for like how to do a webinar, how to sell a program, how to create a program. I was like, I already know how to create programs. I've been doing it for 10 years. I just didn't know you can make a business out of something that I've already been doing. So that was it. It was literally then. And was that timing ideal? No. But I have to say, like, that was such a highly creative time for me. And it also helped me anchor myself in my identity, because I think, like, for me, what happened in the transition of having that first child was I'm a very achievement oriented person, which I've now learned to harness in a positive way instead of a detrimental way. But the transition of having so much success in my educational life and then my professional life, and then cutting all of that, right? And being home, a new mom with a new baby, with a husband whose career just continues to soar and thrive. And I think starting this business helped me not have an identity crisis.
Wow.
And I've seen so many of my friends who have had children and become a stay-at-home mom, and now 10 years later are struggling with who they are because they feel like they gave up their life. And this is not for anyone who wants to be a stay-at-home mom. And I have both, right? I really think
Yes.
I have the best of both worlds. Also some challenges in toggling both worlds, but this is no criticism at all for someone who just decides in this season of my life, this is what I'm going to do. Because even owning this business now, this summer, I've been more in the mommy role than like the CEO role, which is fine. So, but I think for me, it helped me not have that identity crisis. But at the time, I didn't have the self-awareness to recognize how much I was pouring myself into this business in the beginning stages to prove that I was still worthy. And that process actually created some of the challenges of my marriage, because my husband's like, wait, you're supposed to be home, like raising our child. And here you are, like trying to go to this conference or trying to do this other thing. And so I recognize now in hindsight that my zealousness, if that's even a word, like being a zealot for building my business so aggressively in the beginning was me running away from myself.
Wow.
And there did come a point where I was like, no, like this hustle mentality of like, now I see that I can actually make more money in my own business than I did working for this other organization. I wanted that immediately, right? I wanted it immediately. And I didn't know how to get it. And so I'm like buying this program here, doing this thing here, investing here, but also not having any uniformity in it, not really having a lot of direction. And so now, right now, through a series of things that I know we'll probably talk about, I had to redevelop my identity, not on my accomplishments, right? So for the high achieving person, you're so used to your identity being tied to you're just successful. Anything you put your hands to is successful. So you don't have to develop that internal validation, that internal definition of success for yourself, because the world is already telling you you're successful. You have this degree, you have this position, you have this salary. And the entrepreneurial journey is not just like it's like a this and it's this. It's like all over the place. It's like a figure eight. So once I had my like dark night of the soul in my business, for lack of a better word, then I had to rebuild myself and think about, okay, how does this business fit into my life? How does this business serve my family and not just my ego, because I'm so used to being a high achiever?
Wow, that sounds like you were going through heavy inner work, even at that moment as you were building your business.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Definitely.
Okay, so I'm not going to let this one go. Tell us about that dark night of your business.
It started out really great. I'll say that. So one of the things I had set an intention, I was like, I will get to work with whatever mentor I choose, right? As I was building my business and I was learning more about what I wanted and the guidance that I needed to really take it to the level that I wanted to, I just set that intention. And so I found the mentor that I wanted to work with, and I enrolled in her mastermind. That mastermind was very focused on helping you build a business at a certain income level. So I was like, oh, this is great. So go through the first round. Wonderful. It's like a 6-month mastermind. You re-up every time. Second round, like lots of stalls, lots of fails. And I was actually removed from the mastermind. Now, before people get all upset, she has a policy, right? She is very she's very attending to the fact that early entrepreneurs sometimes overinvest in their business without getting any return. So she's a money back guarantee. So if you're not making the level of investment that you've already paid her, she will give you your money back because she doesn't want people spending their life's fortune, never making any money in their business. So the decision was made that, I wasn't making the money that I invested back. And so she released me from the program. Devastating.
Was that the first time of you saying, I failed?
It wasn't, but I think that failure was more humiliating because the other failures had been more private failures, right?
Got
like
it.
A mastermind, you're in a group of other coaches working towards the same goal. So before I joined that mastermind, my failure of like my second program that I launched, my first program sold. So I was like, oh, I'm definitely good at this. The second time I launched it with more intention and more resources behind it, it failed. So that was a private failure. So I wasn't in a circle and I wasn't in a community of other coaches knowing this, right? So now I'm released from it. People are like, well, where are you? Right?
Wow.
And then you have to explain like, no, I'm not going to be at our next training because I'm not in the program anymore. So what was so great about that for me though, ultimately was I made the decision. I was like, when I rejoined this mastermind, because this was the coach I was committed to working with, I was like, I'm going to be a different person because I recognized that the limitations were all self-imposed and were all my own mindset issues. It wasn't that I didn't have a great program. It wasn't that I wasn't a great coach. Like that was clear to me. It was my own stuff that I needed to work through. And so I spent the next year doing more internal work. I hired a one-on-one coach to really help me clear some of those blocks in my own thinking so that I could soar. I re-entered that same mastermind, walked across the stage to get my award for meeting that milestone that the mastermind was intended to.
Wow.
So, but in that period, it was like failure to me had never been so hard.
Wow.
That was the hardest. And it really forced me to develop within myself, this is what success looks like to you, Chavonne. This is what it means to you. This is how you validate yourself and build your identity independent of the external factors that are in front of you.
So what does success mean to you, Dr. Chavonne?
Yeah, so success to me means being in alignment with your desires and offering service to the world.
So what is your why?
Yeah. So my why, I would say it's twofold. One is for sure to build a legacy for my family. I think about business owners that I know who have like huge businesses now. They can hire their kids, right? Like, or their kids can inherit the business. So there's a part of me that knows I want to leave this business behind for my children to do whatever they want to do with it. Mm-hmm. And then the other is really like this heart of service of when I think about even the scripture and just the commandment to love others as you love yourself, like loving well, being kind, that is my why.
So Dr. Chavonne, if you fast track in years to come and you give a message to your kids on legacy, what would you tell your kids?
That's such a great question. I would tell my kids that whatever desire is in your heart is meant for you to create in the world, that you have everything inside of you to do it, and that it's really your responsibility to make sure it gets accomplished.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love it. So going back to you as a business owner, who were the biggest supporters of Dr. Chavonne and her quest to serving others now through this business in life coaching and marriage coaching?
I would say first, like tangible support, definitely my husband, right? So like to start a business, he carried us financially and continues to carry us financially in many, many ways as this business continues to grow and evolve. I would say my parents have been so massively helpful. They actually fly in when I do my retreats and take care of my kids
That's
and make sure
awesome.
that they can go. And I would say my sister, she has a role in my business. She's like my podcast manager. So she takes care of all of that for me. And then I have a circle of friends that just really support me no matter where I am in the business, right? When things are up and it's
Yes.
amazing and we're celebrating, when things are like questionable and we're like, what do we do here to strategize? And then I have just a number of mentors that have been really, really instrumental in showing me what's possible for myself.
That's amazing, Dr. Chavonne. For the women out there listening who may not have that strong support system that you've described as crucial to your success, what would you recommend for them to do?
I think you have to be intentional about surrounding yourself with like-minded people. That has been what I did. It's so interesting because in the course of building my business, my best friend actually passed away.
I'm sorry for that.
Thank you. I remember thinking intentionally, like, I need support. I need a community of women. And I remember like being in circles and literally seeking out people. Like I would look at what they posted in a group that we were in and I'd be like, oh, this person, I would write a post like that. And I remember like my one friend that I'm still friends with now, probably like 7 years later, she was hiring someone. So she posted like who she was looking for, the description of the type of person she wanted to hire. And I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds exactly like what I would write. And I literally just reached out to her. I was like, listen, I know this must sound weird, but I saw your job description post and she lived relatively close to me. So I was like, I think like we're like-minded. Like, do you want to chat? Do you want to just like get to know each other? And literally there's not a day that goes by that we don't voice message each other, text each other, talk to each other, support each other in some kind of way.
Wow. So you actually intentionally looked for that support system. It wasn't that it was just there and it just happened.
No, you have to be really intentional about it. And I think you have to be clear about what you need in your friendship circles, right? So like I was looking for an entrepreneur friend that was, in a similar boat. Like I have other friends, but I was also looking for someone that was close in proximity because my circle of friends from graduate school, like we're all scattered across the country. So I knew what I was looking for. So you really have to be specific. Like I want someone who's also an entrepreneur. I want someone who's also a mom. I want someone who's like all these characteristics and qualities that you're looking for. You just have to be intentional about it and really reach out when you see that person that's like, wait, I think this might be my person.
But also it builds from your strength, right? That you are an extroverted and
Yes.
you are a go-getter. So yeah, but for my introverted friends out there, you can still do that if you're intentional enough. It may take a little bit more energy, but you can still do it because it is possible.
And I think thinking about it on an individual level, like I work better like with individual friendships, even though I'm an extrovert.
Yes.
That has helped too.
That's a good point. Like it's not this massive group of people,
Right.
just like one person at a time, make that connection, build that relationship. And then all of a sudden there is a support system behind you. That's a really cool hack and way of you approaching it. One key question to my podcast. Were you expected to be successful, Dr. Chavonne?
I was expected to be successful. Yeah, I just think my parents, like grew up in an environment where success wasn't the norm. And so I was born in Mississippi. We moved when I was like 4 to Virginia for my dad's job. And they were so intentional about making sure we lived in the best school districts, that I had the best opportunities. And so I knew that, right? I remember when we moved once and I was like, why are we moving all the way here? They're like, this is the best school district. And just the idea that they would make that sacrifice to always put me in the best circumstances, I knew it was never like said, you have to be successful, but I could see their investment in me as the torch of like
Wow.
we're trusting you to carry this through and to be successful. So that's I think where it came from, of just recognizing their sacrifice in what they didn't have available to them that they made sure I had available to me.
Well, I love how you said that their actions was an investment in you, even making sure that they research where those places you needed to be happened. And despite the challenges and the changes that meant for them as adults, as a couple, as a marriage, right? As like beginning again all over as a provider, your dad, right? For the family.
Yeah, definitely. Because now that even you saying that, I'm like, yeah, they had a really long commute, right? Like they had a really long commute, but I was in the best school district.
Beautiful investment for the woman that is here before us, speaking to us today. All right. So in one word, how can you summarize this journey of business ownership, Dr. Chavonne?
I would say growth. Just growth. Just growth.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Okay. What are you most proud about your own journey as a businesswoman?
Yeah, I think literally that getting released from the mastermind, coming back, really like not only coming back and achieving the milestone, but coming back having done my work, right? Because I think I could have made more money in a lot of different ways, but it was like, no, I'm really intentional to slow myself down, to develop myself as a person, to create this result in my life. And I'm really proud that I gave myself the space and the grace and did the inner work to really like show up differently to that experience moving forward.
That is so awesome. And if you have some advice for the women out there aspiring to be their own business owner and they're hesitant to do that, despite like in the midst of all these situations and like looking for that ideal moment, what would you tell them, Dr. Chavonne?
Yeah, there is no ideal moment, right? There isn't. I think if it is in your heart to do, it is meant to be done. And just like the legacy statement I would say to my children, I would say that to anyone who has a desire to create something in the world. It's necessary for the world. It's supposed to be there. You are the person to bring it forth, and there will never be a perfect time. And to really stop agonizing over what feels like the next perfect step and just make one step.
Simplify it. Make it easier on yourself.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Okay, you mentioned earlier 3 books of your authorship. Tell us about it.
My first book is called Voices in Your Ear, New Conversations to Renew Your Mind and Transform Your Marriage. And that's a devotional for women that I self-published years and years ago. And after that, I was approached by a publishing company to write 2 books. So I wrote a workbook for newlywed couples, or recently engaged couples. So it's it's a very long title. I want to say it's a workbook, a premarital workbook for Christian couples is the name of it. It's an actual workbook. And then I have a newlywed devotional for newly married couples.
For my audience, I will include the links to that in my description.
All of them are on Amazon.
Wow, what an interesting and intriguing journey for you, Dr. Chavonne. And what is it most exciting for you for the next year? What is your next big milestone you want to meet, other than now that you finished the masterclass?
I think it's just growing my program. So I have a couples coaching program called the Marriage Upgrade that I am absolutely in love with. And my goal is to put a lot of attention and effort in getting that program out to as many couples as possible.
So how can they get in touch with you for that and the other amazing things that you have going on to offer to married couples and women?
Honestly, the best place always is my website. It's drchavonne.com. There you will find my links to my podcast, because I also have a podcast.
Awesome.
Links to work with me directly, to hear about my coaching programs, as well as any free masterclasses or programs or resources that I have available.
So for my audience, just repeating drchavonne.com. That's easy enough. And Dr. Chavonne, it's been a pleasure. It's been fun. It's been insightful to speak to you. Thank you for sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. And for my audience, thank you for joining us. More to come. Please don't forget to subscribe and share these beautiful stories, because we never know who is in need of the information and the stories and the know-hows and the role models that come from these stories. So until next time, more to come with Unexpectedly Successful, the podcast.